Before we get into all that, can we talk about the word populist for a sec?
Yet, it's often used to describe politicians who appeal to the common person, but always with these negative connotations. They're simplifying complex issues or stirring up all this emotion just to gain support. But the thing is, this isn't some new phenomenon.
Not so crazy. Shakespeare was dealing with the same stuff back in the 16th century.
And he used Roman history as this kind of safe space to explore all these dangerous ideas. He was tapping into those universal anxieties we have about power, like who has it, who should have it, who gets to decide.
So going back to Julius Caesar, the play opens with this celebration, right? The crowd is head over heels for Caesar. But was he really this power-hungry tyrant? Or were people just led to believe that? It feels very deliberate that Shakespeare keeps that answer hidden, doesn't it?
It does, and I think that ambiguity is so clever because it forces us to wrestle with the same questions as those Romans back then. And don't forget, Shakespeare based the play on Plutarch's Lives, which actually portrays Caesar in a much more heroic light. So right off the bat, he's playing with our expectations.
Interesting. So he was taking some liberties with the story then. Why do you think he did that? What was he going for, do you think?
I think he wanted to explore the different sides of power, the allure of it, but also how it can corrupt. There's that scene where Caesar gets a warning about the assassination, but then he just ignores it because he's busy helping some common people. So is he being selfless? Or is he so blinded by his own image that he can't see the danger right in front of him? Shakespeare wants us to figure it out for ourselves.
Yeah, for sure. It's like he's saying, hey, leadership's complicated, right? Even the most well-intentioned people can be flawed. And people are going to interpret their actions in all sorts of ways.
Exactly. It's all about perspective. And I think the play really digs into the way language shapes public opinion when we get to Brutus and Mark Antony's speeches after the assassination.
Oh, man, those speeches. Talk about a masterclass in rhetoric. You've got Brutus, who's all about appealing to logic and reason, right? And then Antony comes in with this wave of emotion that just totally flips the script. What's interesting is they're both incredible speakers, right? But they use language in totally different ways to get what they want.
Totally. Yeah, and that contrast really shows how easily a crowd, even one that's trying to do the right thing, can get swept up by a powerful speaker. Like Brutus, he tries to connect with the people by speaking in plain prose, appealing to logic and patriotism. He's a true believer in reason.
Yeah, he thinks if he lays out all the facts, people will get it. Yeah. They'll understand and support what he did.
Exactly. But then Antony comes in and he's all about emotion. He doesn't just talk about Caesar, he brings them back to life. He uses these vivid images, describes Caesar's wounds, reminds everyone of all the good Caesar did.
Friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ears. Come on. That's one of the most iconic lines ever. He doesn't even try to defend himself right away. He connects with them on an emotional level first.
Yeah, and then you have the repetition of Brutus is an honorable man. On the surface, it seems like praise, but it's slowly becoming more and more ironic. He's subtly discrediting Brutus with each honorable man, planting seeds of doubt while looking like he's defending him.
It's brilliant. He takes apart Brutus's whole argument without ever directly saying Brutus is wrong. He lets the crowd come to that conclusion on their own, fueled by all that grief and anger.
Exactly. And I think that's what makes it such a powerful example of populism as this double-edged sword, right? It can be a force for good, but it's also so easily manipulated. And Shakespeare demonstrates that brilliantly.
And then you get to that super intense moment in the play when Cinna the poet is killed. They mistake this totally innocent guy for a conspirator, and he's torn apart by the mob. It's not about reason or debate anymore. It's just pure chaos.
Oh, absolutely. And it just highlights the danger of mob mentality, how quickly a crowd can become dangerous, deadly even, when they're driven by their emotions, especially when that anger is misdirected.
It really makes you think about how we make sense of all this stuff today. It's a powerful reminder that we can't just follow charismatic leaders blindly. Even when it feels tempting.
Yeah.
We have to think for ourselves, question what we're being told, and be really careful of anyone who seems to gain from stirring up chaos and division.
It's so true.
But I want to go back to Brutus for a second. This guy's dealing with some serious moral dilemmas, don't you think?
Absolutely.
He's convinced that killing Caesar is the only way to save Rome.
Yeah, he's often seen as this tragic hero of the play, a man who loves his country deeply, but is also blinded by his own idealism.
Yeah. He's so sure that Caesar will become a tyrant, that Caesar's ambition will destroy the Republic, that he's willing to murder him to stop it.
And that's where the whole ethical thing about rebellion comes in. He doesn't just make Brutus a straight-up villain. He makes us ask those hard questions. Like, when is it okay to overthrow a leader? Even for the greater good. And then who gets to decide what that greater good even is?
Right. And it's not like Caesar was this textbook tyrant either.
Yeah.
I mean, he was popular. People loved him. But Brutus and the other conspirators, they were scared of the power he had. They saw him as this threat to the whole idea of the Roman Republic.
Exactly. And that's what makes their decisions so tough. They're acting on what they think is best for Rome, right? But they're also driven by their own fears, their own interpretations of what Caesar wants, what he might do with his ambition.
Yeah, and let's not forget Cassius, who was like in Brutus's ear this whole time, planting those seeds of doubt about Caesar.
Yeah.
He's got his own agenda, doesn't he?
Oh, totally. Cassius is a master manipulator. He takes Brutus's idealism and just throws fuel on the fire with his own jealousy and resentment. Remember that scene where he talks about Caesar trying to swim across a river and how Caesar had to be saved because he was struggling so much?
Yeah, he's basically saying, look at Caesar. He can't even swim. How can he lead Rome?
Exactly.
Yeah.
He's chipping away at Caesar's image, making him look weak, trying to make people doubt him. And honestly, those tactics are so old, people still use them all the time.
Totally. It's the same playbook, right? Find your opponent's weakness, whether it's real or not, and then use it against them. Make the public doubt them. But even with all that manipulation, there's still this question about what Caesar really wanted. Did he actually want to be king? Or was there something else going on, something more complicated?
We see Caesar through other people's eyes. It's all about how they interpret what he says and does. It plays right into that idea that he's ambitious, that he's hungry for power. But then again, what if he meant it? What if he really believed he was doing the best for Rome by being powerful, but not a king? Shakespeare wants us to think about it, to consider the different possibilities. He's showing us how power is complicated and how our perceptions can totally shape what we think is real.
Totally. He's saying, don't just accept what's right in front of you. Think deeper, question people's motives, realize that there might be way more to the story than you initially thought.
Exactly. And that brings us right back to the assassination and what happens after. Brutus thinks he's saved Rome, right? So he goes to talk to the crowd. He thinks logic and reason will win the day. But like we talked about earlier, that's not how human emotions work, especially when you have a speaker as skilled as Mark Antony on the other side.
His speech comes from a good place, but it totally backfires. He underestimates how powerful emotions are, how much the people need to grieve, to try to make sense of this horrible thing that just happened.
And Antony sees an opportunity. He doesn't just tell them about Caesar, right? He brings Caesar back to life, using all these vivid images. He reminds them what Caesar did for Rome, how generous he was. He even shows them Caesar's wounds.
It's brutal. But man, it's effective. He turns the crowd against the conspirators by appealing to their hearts. He doesn't even bother with logic at that point.
Exactly. And that's such an important lesson for everyone, not just leaders. Words are incredibly powerful. They can inspire, they can comfort people, but they can also be used to provoke, to manipulate.
It's true. It's like that old saying, right? That pen is mightier than the sword. Except in this case, it's Antony's words that destroy the conspirators.
Yes, and I think it reminds us that even when we have the best intentions in the world, our actions can still have consequences that we never saw coming. Brutus thought killing Caesar would bring peace and stability, right? But instead, it throws Rome into chaos. Civil war breaks out.
It's the exact opposite of what Brutus wanted. It's, wow, even when you think you're doing the right thing, things can spiral out of control so quickly.
Yeah, and that's the tragedy at the heart of it all, right? Julius Caesar, it's like this warning sign about what happens when ambition goes unchecked, about how powerful words can be, about how even the best intentions can go so wrong.
Like Shakespeare was teaching media literacy way back then, before the internet even.
Totally. And maybe the most important thing, he's reminding us that we're not just watching history happen, we're part of it. We have a voice, we can make choices, and it's our responsibility to get involved in the world, to think critically about what's happening around us.
Because Julius Caesar isn't just about ancient Rome. It's about all those timeless struggles. Power, ambition, trying to figure out how to balance freedom with what's good for everyone.
Absolutely. It's a story that's still being told today. It's a reminder that what we do matters. The leaders we choose matter. And the words we use, they have power.
They really do. So next time you see everyone getting caught up in something, or if you're facing a tough choice, one that could have a big impact, remember Julius Caesar.
Think for yourself. Don't be afraid to ask questions. And never forget how much power you have when you're informed and engaged.